It is my sad duty to report to the people of the United States that Richard M. Nixon, who served as our 37th president, died this evening in New York City at 9:08 p.m. with his family at his side.
The 37th president of the United States dies 20 years after leaving the White House. Headline News, I'm Bob Lozier sitting in for David Goodnow. At this hour, the nation is mourning the death of former President Richard Milhouse Nixon. The U.S. flag has been lowered to half-staff at the White House. He died Friday night in a New York hospital. The 81-year-old had been hospitalized since Monday when he suffered a massive stroke that left him partially paralyzed and unable to speak. He lapsed into a deep coma and reportedly was never put on a respirator because he left instructions not to be revived. Mr. Nixon served as the 37th president of the United States until the Watergate scandal forced his resignation in 1974. President Clinton spoke a short time ago at the White House. He expressed his condolences and declared a national day of mourning.
To be sure, he experienced his fair share of adversity and controversy, but his resilience and his diligent desire to give something back to this country and to the world provide a lesson for all of us about maintaining our faith in the future. In spite of everything, that faith led President Nixon to leave his mark on his times as few national figures have done in our history, and led him to continue to serve right up to the end of his life.
Mr. Nixon's body will be flown to California, where it will lay in state at the Nixon Presidential Library. President Clinton is expected to attend the funeral. Political leaders from around the world are praising the former president. China called him an old friend of the Chinese people, and Russian President Boris Yeltsin praised his great political experience. Eileen O'Connor has more on Mr. Nixon's relationship with Russia.
For the Russians, former President Richard Nixon was an elder statesman who understood. His most recent visit was in March, meeting with opposition leaders like Alexander Rutskoy aide Andrei Fedorov.
In a certain way, he is probably the pioneer of the new approach towards Russia after all the things which has happened last year.
Even for Boris Yeltsin, Mr. Nixon's symbolic importance here was not underestimated. Yeltsin canceled his meeting with the former president, saying Nixon's talks with opposition leaders held first were insulting, the Russian leader knowing how Russians feel about Mr. Nixon. Ever since coming in 1959 as vice president, Nixon made his mark. Opening the first exhibit on American lifestyle, he argued with then General Secretary Nikita Khrushchev that life under capitalism was better.
He behaved himself at that time as a typical American politician, kissing children, giving candies in the children's garden. Authorities thought that this is, it's a valuation of dignity of our country. We have our own candies.
Even Mr. Nixon admitted that at the time, he himself underestimated Khrushchev.
I underestimated him, many in the American government. He was really breaking new ground, and he was, without question, a leader who helped prepare the way for what has happened since then.
Ultimately, it was not the kitchen debate, but détente that defined the Nixon image here. For those who remember the standoff over Vietnam, the arms race, the importance of the easing of those tensions at the time cannot be denied.
There was permanent fear that somebody will attack us. The same was in the United States.
So détente was
inevitable, desired, very desired.
In an era of such mutual distrust, Russians say it was only a hardliner like Nixon who could have made the gesture work, coming to Moscow in 1972, initialing the historic SALT agreement.
His role in détente was so important that after impeachment, the not official, but it was official explanation that the enemies of détente did it.
But it may be his most recent championing of support for the former Soviet Union that will be his legacy. After winning the Cold War, he said often, we are in danger of losing the peace.
That means that the United States, therefore, should not treat Russia
не должна
as a defeated
обращаться с
enemy,
Россией как с врагом,
but as an ally and friend.
For the Russians, it was Richard Nixon who became their ally and honest broker. Eileen O'Connor, CNN, Moscow.
And once again, former President Richard Nixon dead at the age of 81. We'll keep you updated with the latest on Headline News. Story now, former President Richard Nixon has died at a New York City hospital. Mr. Nixon had been in a deep coma after suffering a stroke Monday. One of America's most controversial presidents, Mr. Nixon's career was full of highs and lows. He rose out of poverty to become the nation's 37th president in 1968 and was re-elected in 1972. But soon after, the Watergate scandal caught up with him. In 1974, Mr. Nixon became the first American president to resign. Mr. Nixon will also be remembered for his foreign policy genius. He was the first incumbent U.S. president to visit communist China. Mr. Nixon remained active in international relations until a month before his death. He was 81 years old.
I knew Dick Nixon from the very first day that I was sworn in as a member of the House of Representatives in January 1949, when he came up and shook my hands and introduced himself. And our friendship extended over that 45-year period in politics and social life. We enjoyed a close and warm friendship, and I happen to believe very strongly that Dick Nixon was one of the finest, if not the finest, foreign policy presidents of this century.
We'll be back.